Evening, everyone. Sorry for the late start. I think we have got our paperwork in order here. We are calling the 9th regular meeting of the Board of Directors of School Administrative District number 52, the 23-24 board year. Let's kick it off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is our minutes from the last meeting, January 11th. We have a complete copy now in front of us. Hopefully you're able to take a look at that anyway. Does anyone have any comments on this? Okay, seeing none, they are approved by unanimous consent. That brings us to the report of the board chair, and real efficient tonight. I do not have a report, so we can move right on to public comment.
You want to accept that?
I don't know. Yeah, I could sit around and say something. Yeah. So we have a reasonable crowd here tonight, so this might be helpful for some of you. Our board meetings are conducted for the purposes of carrying out the official business of our schools. It is important to note that the meetings of the board are open to the public, where they are not public forums. At each full meeting of the board, time is allocated to provide opportunities for citizens and employees to express opinions and concerns related to the matters under consideration by the board. These comments shall be within the guidelines set forth in policy BEDH, which is public participation board meetings. Copies of that policy are on our website. And just want to highlight a few of the following points from that policy. And that is the chair is responsible for recognizing all speakers. We ask that speakers identify themselves by sharing their name and town of residence. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to express their views. Speakers should direct all comments to the board, specifically the board chair. This is an opportunity for the board to listen to the opinions of the public that relate to school and education matters. But this is not intended to be a conversation or a debate of issues. We know that school-related issues can be emotional, but we ask that civility is maintained. We will not permit profanity, gossip, defamatory comments, shouting at one another, or comments that disparage or attack individual groups. The board is faced with many important issues. For the sake of efficiency, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments. The board will also not permit complaints or allegations against staff members. We certainly care about these concerns, but they are personnel matters, which the board is not permitted to hear in public. If there are complaints against staff, these will be handled appropriately through our complaint policy, KE. Just to reiterate, those are just some highlights. Please refer to the full policy if you have further questions. And with that, would anyone like to speak? Right.
First on my list from Brand. Last year, a FOIA request unearthed an email urging political action. It was shared by some staff and administration and was sent using taxpayer resources. The purpose of this communication was to throw support for the defeat of LD 123, an act to eliminate the educational purposes exemption to the prohibition on the dissemination of obscene and amateur minors. This mouthful is often referred to as the obscene law, though a more apt moniker might be the absurd law, because as we all know, no material meets the impossible requirements for obscene content, as it is simply labeled art. Case in point, Genderqueer, using the eye candy of a graphic novel, invites minors to a live porn site via a URL split right into the story. So why all of the kicking, biting, and scratching? If none of these books is ever deemed obscene, why the need to engage the troops? What is the point of defending your exemption to show obscene content when you don't have any? Surely this coalition of 8 organizations could be spending their energies elsewhere. Of these 8, only one can claim the most tenuous connection to our district. The powers that be have determined, after the fact, that this organization, the Maine Association of School Libraries, can be defined as school-sponsored. Curiously, there is no hard definition of school-sponsored. One may engage in convenient on-the-spot designations tailored to suit any situation that arises. Here, staff can determine by fiat just who is school-sponsored, the requirements of which appear to be satisfied by the very weakest of criteria. As much as the community supports the adoption of GBIA, staff participation in political activities, one can't help but note that this act of sharing politics online is already prohibited by GCSAR, Employee Computer and Internet Use Rules, and its blatant disregard by the administration is devoid of consequence. We expect to be assured, other than by FOIAs, that rules are applied consistently and that resources are not being utilized against taxpayers. According to the current situation, any organization that provides a service to our district may don the cloak that school sponsors and make a claim for not only themselves, but also any other organization they choose for a precious piece of our community resources. This violation constitutes a dereliction of duty to superintend that the funds earmarked for the running of our schools are used appropriately and not for politics. It also has the appearance of invention perpetrated to deflect and protect from responsibility and consequence. We request that structures be put in place to safeguard against future actions of this kind. And if we extend the logic used to defend this infraction, we find in this loophole the answer as to why there is a live porn site listed in our library. Perhaps kink.com is simply a school-sponsored organization.
Oh, please.
My name is Marsha Martin, and I'm a mom to 3 kids in our district. On January 5th, my youngest child was assaulted by another student in a classroom in East Central School. This caused an ongoing response that was witnessed at home, a trauma response that was witnessed at home, in the classroom, and documented by her pediatrician. The trauma was further compounded by more acts of violence in the classroom that resulted in numerous room evacuations and emergency procedures that the classroom teacher deemed necessary to protect all the children in the classroom. This has been a traumatic experience in my family and has shaken us to our core. Tonight, you have a restraint and seclusion policy before you that raises the threshold of a staff member to meet in order to restrict a child's movement in school. The key change is that prior to this policy, a teacher could act in an emergency situation if they were worried someone could be hurt. Now the threshold has been raised to serious physical injury, defined as beyond first aid care, meaning you must be convinced that the actions of the child are severe enough to require a doctor and not simply an ice pack. How is that okay? I can't help but think that if this was the policy when my child was hurt, I think about the children's teachers who strive to protect our kids and worry that they may become fearful to react to an emergency because of this policy. I think about the classroom spaces that have been meticulously put together with time, love, and resources, both public and private, that we allow to be destroyed because now we can only step in if the child is severely hurting themselves or others. The fact that I have questions on whether or not our schools are truly safe have been anxiety-inducing, and I find this policy adding to my concern. I know that as an entity, you are to discuss that change due to state law and your hands are tied. But please think about what you can do. Can you as a board challenge the law? I know that I would struggle to be sitting in your seat right now, knowing that voting for this policy has the very real potential to physically and mentally hurt students and staff in the classroom. If you can't change the law, I'm expressing to you to take care of certain matters with great urgency because children like mine are getting hurt both mentally and physically in MSAD52. You need alternative programming right now to support disruptive and violent students. You have a weak progressive discipline policy in the elementary schools. You must put in place a policy that mitigates dangerous and disruptive behavior immediately. You must meet your obligations for special education, and you need to meet the expectation from this community that our schools are safe places. In order to educate our children, you need to protect all students at MSAD52. It is critical that the board recognizes this is an ongoing issue and takes initiative to solve this problem.
Oh, sorry. I recognize someone who's fine. Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
It's different. I'm a Damon. I teach at the high school. I was honestly just gonna start out what BPA has been doing, which is not exactly what you've been hearing, but Lee's Community Church held an awesome art show this past December that some of you on the board, your children participated in. But I want to invite everyone to do so again May 4th with the theme of renewal. the idea that they have a benefactor that's giving money to our kids. They're doing it first, second, and third prize in categories of kindergarten through or K through 4, 5 through 8, and then the high school. This past winter one was a best in show. And so they gave out $75, $50, and $25 to each of the kids in those places. They also gave $100 as a People's Choice Award. So people came in and voted, and that was $100 gift card to get art supplies. And mine is, I've sent it out to all the art teachers again, but urging for everybody to try and support and get work there. It's amazing. You don't have to be part of the church. They just want to celebrate the amazing things that our kids do. They're also adding an adult portion. You don't get money, but there will be a first, second, and third. If you ever have a minute, stop by central office. Leads is representing us there in that building with the 4th grade, and they have a few dozen of their artworks. Right now, they're citrus fruit. They have texture and color theory that are up there on the wall. Hopefully by Tuesday, I will have PES downstairs in the conference room. They're doing little woven projects. Look at art, it's absolutely adorable when you check it out. Last night was the concert for the high school and middle school. So they had their chorus and band, which we had to reschedule something about a storm that we had for. We had last Friday and Saturday was SpongeBob, which hopefully some of you were able to attend because they're not that part. Yesterday they did auditions for Once. Tomorrow we have districts, which we're like crossing fingers, but that van can still go down. But otherwise they are already done with the tentative editing that's all done on Saturday. They're just gonna miss the practice time work. So lastly, we're gaming up for Arts Gala. Got about 9 artists like slotted out and just waiting for them to confirm. But our kids are busy and we're celebrating them and they do amazing things. I love it.
Like that.
Okay. Where I thought. I come and say my name down. The first paper, it says, what boards are, responsible for strategic government and governance oversight in serving the organization stakeholders. Now, you told me multiple times, K is how you do the complaint process. You've obviously come to an end with that, where you said that there is no more, this is it. And I think this board really needs to look at the stuff that I put forth. I don't think any parent that has to do this stuff and do all this kind of research work and hold it, hand it in and get no response from board members or anybody from administration. That ain't right for a stakeholder and a parent to have to do. I am the parent, I am the stakeholder, you know. So any and all communication put together in that sentence means exactly that. To, from, and between a group of people means exactly that. Anything to them, anything from them, and between them. And I'm so glad that I went to that meeting today because Loomis said that was talking about the word
I
and.
just want you to try to refrain from talking about
Okay.
specific people.
Listen, she is your subordinate. You have jurisdiction over her. Okay? You know what and means, so you know what and means. So this is a problem where I sent in a FOIA request and my request wasn't fulfilled because the superintendent said that she didn't understand what I meant. She didn't know that I meant
Jimmy, is your
to,
second
from,
warning?
and
Is your
between.
second warning
To,
about
from,
making
and-
specific
so
complaints
in
about a
this-
specific
Joe,
person?
I'm speaking.
I am the chair of this commission.
You want to shut my speech down because I'm talking about Mrs. Med? Because she is in your
I'm giving you a
jurisdiction.
second warning, and a third time will be at your speaking.
Reclaim my time.
Continue.
Yeah. So 10 times in this evidence showed that she knew exactly what to and from was because I have emailed to and from people not named in my request. 16 times I found in a different tranche of FOA requests, emails from the people named in my request between each other. So if you only knew what between meant, you would have gave me those 16. But you know what and meant because you said it right there in that meeting. You
I
defined it.
want to stop this right now, because that's.
No, point of order, you cannot do that. She is your subordinate, she is in your jurisdiction, Joe. And,
Your time is up.
no, my time isn't up, listen, public can speak.
I move to recess. Did anyone second that motion? Okay, all those in favor of recess. So we'll keep going again here. We're still in public comment. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak? None. We shall move on to communications. There are none, for me tonight. Carrie, do you have any?
So two resignations, Chelsea Fournier, library ed tech at KPS, but she is she transferred to teaching position, so she is still with us. And then unfortunately, Sue Ellen Rastiak, who is a bus driver, she is one that moved in from out of state. She's taken a job with the state in transportation. So her resignation is effective February 2nd. And then a new hire, Joe Brillant, maintenance worker 2, district wide, effective tomorrow. Nope, the 29th, January 29th.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there are any adjustments to this agenda. I think we have anything to change, right? No. All right, so no adjustments to the agenda. Move on to committee reports. Up first with the finance committee, Crystal.
Not meet tonight, our next meeting is February 8th at 5:30.
Thank you very much. I know PTB did meet tonight. Peter?
Yes, we did. We had a few different items on our agenda. First was a review and report on the district asbestos abatement. It was found when they were working on carpets at Tripp Middle School. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That when they were pulling up some carpet, that they found some tile that was starting to come loose. So immediately the carpet was put back down and those rooms have now been put on the list as well as into the budget for this upcoming year to be abated for the asbestos. In addition to that, Leeds had 2 rooms, both in the basement, both used by staff, not students, but that have been abated and repaired and are back in use. That was done over the holiday break. In addition, we do have some other rooms throughout the district that are safe. There has been testing done quite regularly. That will be hopefully abated as the budget allows over the next few years. That takes us to district water testing. Basically, all good news there. In the past few reported back periods, all of the water across the district that has been tested has come back, good and safe. We have some upgrade options that are not on the cheap side, which nothing ever seems to be, coming in the upcoming budget, specifically for tanks more than anything at a couple of the Turner schools. Which then takes us to the busing. We have a couple items in busing. The program that monitors our busing was upgraded, the bus right system. In addition to the normal upgrades, it was also made with the use of Gmail and Frontline to be able to add time, keeping track of time cards or the work hours. We're in hopes to add mileage and other tracking options to that in time. In addition, we have the ability to give up more direct parent notification. When there's an issue with the new updates, we no longer have to do a district-wide notification. We can do route by route, as well as we are in the test stage of parental bus monitoring, which I believe is are we trying with some?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll test it with a single bus.
Okay, so we haven't actually started it yet.
Correct.
Which will hopefully, as long as it comes and we can assure that it's safe, that parents can be able to know when their buses are leaving, an approximate time, but that's it. You know, not gonna be able to track or to follow it or anything like that. Bus routes, as long as our staffing stays adequate, they're continuing to work on combining middle school and high schoolers. And there is the continuing battle of finding out who's actually going to be on the bus, which is a continual challenge. As it's reported out, quite often the buses will come in the morning, supposed to be loaded, and there's 4 kids on it because, well, they're all riding home with their friends or something. Which is a challenge when we have to pay a bus driver just to go around town just for fun of it. And that left us, the last thing on our agenda was a review of a little drizzle we had on the 18th of December that caused concern and some darkness. The district did some detailed reviews. Tim, did you give a report out on this already?
Just a piece.
Okay.
Well,
Is
a
it
little
in
bit,
your
no,
report?
I did give a little bit of a highlight at the last meeting
Okay.
in my report, yeah.
Do you have it coming in your current report?
No.
Okay, so some of the aspects that they're working on because of events that took place was the hopes of some possible generators to help with the water supply, which we consider one of the greatest issues we got to monitor with the power outage, to make sure that we have water for the schools. I apologize, I'm still getting used to these silly things. And I refuse to go to bible. As well as better communication options. We found out that a lot of our communication options require power to operate, everything from radios to our phone systems. So that is being looked at and changed, as well as the ability for more than just 1 or 2 people to monitor the bus routes in detail. So when all the parents are going, where is everybody that can help? And then there's also a good opportunity for us to find out that a lot of our safety lights and so forth didn't actually work. So some new procedures are being put into place to check those on a regular basis. So even though the storm of the 18th was not a good thing, in some regards, it's opened our eyes and make it safer in the future. And even though it says in the calendar, our next meeting is the 29th, we have some things coming up that are keeping us busy. So as of right now, our next stated meeting is on the 16th at 7 a.m. Just to be accurate. Yes, so that is PTV.
Thank you, Peter. Lots going on there. Speaking of lots going on, curriculum policy, Jamie.
We did meet tonight. We started our meeting with Teresa, giving us some curriculum work updates. She is on February 8th at our next meeting. She's kind of give us a big rundown of all the work that they did at the teacher workshop day on curriculum. So we're looking forward to that. We reviewed ACAA, the sexual harassment and discrimination policies that got sent back to us today. So that will show up on a future agenda for the whole board. Then we did KHC, which is distribution of non-school materials, and that was kind of in conjunction with the another policy that referenced it. So this was approved unanimously in committee and will show up as a reference on another policy, which when we get to it, I'll mention it. And then the last thing we did was I think most people were on the board then, but I think if you weren't, last year, there was a motion to send IJJ, which is our library selection policy, back to us for review. So that showed up on our agenda tonight, just to kind of lay the groundwork for that. And we put in place as a committee a timeline for how that's going to look. And I just wanted everyone to know, especially members of the community. Right now, the timeline that we're in is just collecting suggestions, concerns that people might have with that policy. And we're asking people to email the committee. So that would be me, Bree, and Anthony. With any concerns or suggestions you have for that policy. We will give ourselves time to review those and come together as a committee. And then bring questions to stakeholders, teachers, the teachers union, and our goal is to have it on the official, agenda for the board to vote on by June. Not,
Just, to put it on the record for everyone, what is the deadline for submitting feedback that
Oh, yeah.
the committee members?
February 29th. That's when we would like.
February 29th. Thank you very much. Jessica is not here tonight to give us an update on the TTEA support staff negotiations. I believe we are discussing that later on. Anyway, it's a group. And tonight we have a new student representative we'd like to welcome, Abby Simpson. Welcome, Abby.
Thank you.
I don't know if you and Sydney have anything you'd like to say tonight to the board?
It's Abby, but. It's good to see some familiar faces. We just finished up with midterm, which very thankful that we wrapped that up. That was a stressful week, but now we started the second semester. And we've also, student council actually met yesterday. We're starting to decide for winter carnival, like the themes and like different activities. So we're all looking forward to that. And like you mentioned as well, the art gala is coming up soon. So there's a lot of good things to look forward to in the second semester.
Are you, Abby, can you just say, are you a junior?
Yes, I'm a junior representative.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anything to add, Cindy? Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you very much. Some administrative reports, and we'll start off with the summer school principal and start that.
So the elementary school principals, and staff have worked collaboratively, even though I can't say it, to work on our remote, learning plans and schedules so that we have those in place should we have to go to remote learning. They're including the specialist Title I schedules. We're also gonna have like a office hour so that if, parents or students need to reach out to their teacher or to me, that we'll have an office hour available for them, and that's already gone home to parents. We'll be starting 3 different book groups here at LCS. We'll be reading from the staff selected, where you've got the first 6 weeks of school, provide strategies for building relationships and creating systems. Best practices at Tier 1. We're working on our Tier 1 PBIS to make sure that we have that solid so that we can move up to the other tiers. And teach like a champion, which kind of gives some quick assistance for students. Title I changes are now in place. Also happy to excited that with the change in the basement, working with Dave Colburn so that we can start using some of those spaces downstairs again for students, and we'll be continuing to work on that. Mrs. Scott is preparing her unit for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. All classrooms have been participating in the social emotional lessons, the second step that's in our district goals. And another PBIS update, we are working with Jennifer Buttersworth, who is our district consultant, and we've surveyed staff. And we are looking, our last thing that we did was identifying behaviors in different areas and trying to turn that into a rubric so that we can teach those skills that we want the students to have at those areas. And I included for you the chant on the very back page. It does not say, doesn't say that we, I can't remember what word you wanted, but we soar. We don't fly, we soar.
Very good. Thank you so much. And we'll move on to, actually, any questions? Okay. We'll move on to the Trip Middle School principal, Ms. Mates.
Right, I mixed it up a little bit on my board report because I didn't have any updated bar data, which I had been sharing with you, just because right now we're reporting out at progress reports or more sort of in between those. I wanted to highlight, we started peer tutoring, and so we're on like a green day, white day schedule at the middle school. And so every other day on white day, students have study hall. And so we're running peer tutoring out of the library. And so it's choice right now. Students who are caught up on all of their work can elect to go to the library and serve as a peer tutor. And then students who need help can elect to go to the library and receive extra support from a peer tutor. We've been doing it for, this is the 3rd week and it's going really well. We're averaging today up to 30 students at a time sort of coming in. some for 10 minutes, some will stay for the whole time, and so I'm really hopeful that that will be one more layer to students getting assignments turned in. And positively affecting the failure rates that we're tracking. I also shared some highlights from our climate survey. Some things that we were focusing on. I did want to give a shout out to our maintenance crew and our custodians. Some of the numbers around the school cleanliness have gone up tremendously. In addition, students feeling safe, and I don't want to attribute it solely to the school resource officer, but I think just some of the revisions we've been doing around like training on the bus drivers and things like that, the data continues to go in the right direction, which is reflected if you look at the behavioral data and the average daily referrals by month. I know it's only the almost last week of January, but significantly going down as far as negative choices by middle schoolers while at school. So.
Any questions?
So, excuse me, I have a question about the peer tutoring.
Yeah.
And I was just, it surprised me, because, I mean, just myself, I never would have wanted to be tutored by a peer, and I would have assumed it would have been like high school students, so I was really surprised to hear about it, and I wasn't sure like what the research was or where it like came from. I think it's fascinating that 30 kids will grow up and.
It came from observation in classrooms during study hall when middle school kids are just staring at their computer for 50 minutes.
Okay.
And there's really only one teacher, and so students know during study hall they can seek out their teachers and get extra help. Some do. Some don't. That's out of their comfort level, especially if the study hall they're in and the teacher they need to see is somewhere else. So it's just one more thing that we're collecting data. We're leaving it as sort of choice right now. If it continues to go well, we'll leave it. We're starting to prompt a little bit if a student is not wanting to go work with a teacher to just go try working library, but I don't know. It's pretty cool to see. Like they're more apt to sit with a peer and sort of be comfortable, I guess, and not really understand what's going on. It wasn't sort of what we expected, like people feeling insecure about but not knowing something. And it's really cute. We just have a couple kids that go down and they just sit, they look around like waiting to help someone. I think that's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? All right. We'll move on to the Turner Primary School Principal Report on this point.
And then ill with other people who are ill.
Okay.
Not in school.
All right, so there is an adjustment to the agenda.
Sorry.
It's all right. Moving on to our report from our Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Mills.
Okay, thank you. So tonight I wanted to report on several areas with which I have the pleasure of working. The first one is grants. So I wasn't going to tell you all, and I'm going to still keep part of it a secret, but I wanted to give a little teaser. So we recently submitted a Maine Outdoor Learning Initiative grant for, it's around $30,000. It's to expand outdoor learning opportunities for our 6th through 8th graders. And I want to thank Evan Shaw and Isaiah Davis for working with me and my assistant Cassandra Roy on this application. That's all you're getting right now. I'll give you more updates as we get them. I did receive notification that they've received the application, so it's a little tricky. And thank you, Evan. I know we have several projects that we're cooking up, and one final one was submitted. I want to thank Gabby and also Cassandra for their help with the ESEA Title Federal grants. We have been working on the grants as far back as FY21, working to get things cleaned up. And we continue to seek assistance and are anxiously awaiting returns to our phone calls and emails so we can finalize all of this. These are grants that provide staffing. Shannon mentioned Title I, so they provide staffing to our Title I schools. They provide professional development, training, student materials, and supplies. So it's quite a bit of money, and we are anxious to have everything done correctly. Another grant that is continuing to be expended, I mentioned it before, is the Preventing Student Homelessness Grant. This is a Maine DOE grant. It's a 2-year pilot. I'm hoping that we may get some more money this year. We have been able to support our students and their families who need heat and utilities, and that has been really heartwarming to be able to provide that sort of support for students that need it. We also just learned that we have been allocated $78,000 to support literacy in our district. This is another Department of Ed grant, and the funds need to be expended by September 30th, 2024. And I'm sure we'll have no problem spending them all. Another area where I have the pleasure of working is curriculum. So I did mention that January 22nd was a full workshop day. The majority of our day was dedicated to curriculum work. Exit surveys were given to help planning for our March 15th workshop day, and principals are also collecting information for me on the status of our curriculum work. So we're gonna put all this information together and give you a status of curriculum for the board presentation on February 8th. So that is coming up, and I'm really excited to share all the work that has been happening. Assessment is another area. I am the district assessment coordinator. So the students in grades 1 through 8 are finishing up their winter NWEA assessments. While the winter assessments are optional by the Maine DOE, our 5 schools have administered this to continue to collect data on student progress and achievement. Our access testing is continuing for our multilingual students. This is an English language proficiency test, and it's required by part of the state assessment system. So it's on that. And finally, I thought you might want to know what I'm doing for professional development, which is another area I love. I am participating in 2 professional book studies. This might shock some of you. One with Joe Schmidt on the book that he co-authored called Civil Discourse. He used to work for the Maine Department of Education, and he's now out on his own, and he co-authored this book. And I believe that Iva is in this book study with me. And it's been really, I think Kristen Levesque is in it, and that's it from our district. I've really enjoyed working with it, and Joe is super knowledgeable, so that's a lot of fun. The other book study that I'm in is called the PD book. It's by Elena Aguilar, and I'm doing that with the Maine curriculum leaders, and that is just really, it's helping me grow professionally. Both of these books are. And I used some of those strategies when Mallory and I did some work on January 22nd. You'll see Mallory in a few minutes. And then recent meetings with the Department of Ed specialist Steve Saucier and Brianne Lolar have provided information and resources both on literacy, Wabanaki studies, and both topics are relevant to my work and my professional development. So those have been helpful. It's nice when the Department of Education can provide us with some information that is helpful that we can share. And in case you wondered if I was reading anything else, I am. I'm also reading Building Thinking Classrooms, which you're going to hear about from Alicia in a little bit, Clarity for Learning and Shifting the Balance, which is on literacy. There's 2 books, K2 and 3-5, all related to our curriculum work, and I love reading, so I just want to know what I was reading professionally. That's all I have to report.
Jam-packed report tonight, Tracy.
Well, you know, I felt last time it was a little weak, so I had to try to rank it up a little bit.
Forward to the curriculum discussion. Yes, Anthony.
I have a question if I can. So, there are these grants that are coming in. Do those grants provide budget relief?
That's a great question. The ESEA Title federal grants actually can provide budget relief because, for example, for Title I, we have used it to pay for ed techs. And if we did not get those funds, they would have to be in the general budget. So we pay for 4 ed techs at Leeds, 3 ed techs at Green, and 1 at Trip. So.
But the others are additional expenditures beyond what the board approved in the budget last year?
What do you mean the others?
Well, the other grant.
Like the literacy one actually will allow
Will
us to
provide,
yeah.
yes, the literacy one will provide some relief because I am hopeful that we can buy resources for our teachers for ELA. So what that is going to look like is to be determined, but that will be relief. It won't be put into the district budget for next year. The Preventing Student Homelessness grant does not replace anything. We pay for, in the title grant, there's, we are required to write a project to support students experiencing homelessness. So this is not in the general budget at all. And the other one I mentioned, the main outdoor learning initiative, is not. I suppose it could, but
We wouldn't budget for
we
the
wouldn't
project.
budget, we wouldn't budget for the project. That's why it's so exciting.
So those, just so that I'm clear, so some of those are above and beyond what the budget. Normally would be. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? You're on to the superintendent's report. Okay.
So I'm just gonna finish passing out the photocopies of the items. These are the consent agenda that didn't go out yet, so I've been holding on some info. So in the consent agenda, you'll see two job descriptions. They are stipended positions that we have had and just haven't had job descriptions for. So that's what they are when you see them for the PBIS leadership. And then I'm handing out the full policy for the other items that's in the consent agenda. You guys had the full policy last time, but the one that's in your packet has every other page missing from the photocopying. So that's just giving you all pages. Okay. So my update today is gonna be about budget. Somewhere around this time of the year, last year, I brought to you the ED 279, which is the document in which the state tells us what our subsidy is gonna be. And that, if you recall, you probably have PTSD from that moment. I suffered PTSD for 2 weeks before I made you guys suffer with it. So I have an update. We have our preliminary ED 279 that I want to share with you.
Oh, I tried.
You want to?
Here. Did you go to Premier?
Yeah.
Okay. I did library co-op.
There's nothing.
Oh, I didn't know.
Okay. Let's send it back my way. I was hoping to share with other folks too, so I apologize. I tested at the beginning and it worked. So, all right, so this is an incredibly complex formula. Like it is, you need a PhD to understand it. So I'm gonna give you the highlights that Gabby and I sort of like have fully embraced. So the first thing you see at the top is the number of students. This is the most important number in terms of how much money we get from the state. So we are up 33.5 students. I don't know why. I honestly, I know somebody, I have no idea why it says a half, but it does. So being up students is great. Lots of people around us have lost students. So this is a really good number for us. The second set of information that, well, I could show it in the pre-K run now. The second set of data I've highlighted for you is, it says SAU data in EPS matrix. So we provide all kinds of data to the state. That data determines what they send us. So it is all self-reporting. So if our reporting meets the requirements and the guidelines and follow the rules, then what we get in return is an accurate reflection of that. What we discovered last spring was that our data for what we submit on our teachers was not accurate. There had been just some misunderstandings and a lack of training. So you get more money. So when you have a teacher who has a bachelor's degree and 0 years of experience, they count one time. But if you have a teacher with a master's degree and 20 years experience, they might count 1.6. So the more experience and the more degrees you have, the more it multiplies in terms of what you get in return, like what they're saying to the cost of your staff is. We had undercounted on the vast majority of our teachers because we were looking at years of service to the district and not years of experience totally, right? So a teacher who starts for 5 years in Lewiston and then comes out to us, those 5 years had gone missing. So staff was amazing. Martha spent weeks on this. We went and touched every single employee and went back and made sure we had their records and we updated that. And when you look at the bottom of that first sheet, between the increase in students and the corrections of data, and the state has increased how much they're gonna give us per pupil by $305 and $314. That first page saw an increase over last year of $855,000. So we did that, like we got through 33 kids. We don't have control over that. However, we got our data accurate and that made a huge difference. So when you go to the second page, if you recall last year, one of our major problems was the cliff and drop off of students who were socioeconomically disadvantaged. So similar to teachers, you get an additional multiplier for students who are, you can see here, multi-language learners, and then the disadvantage is the most important. We, last fall, the principals did a great job of helping to make sure this really got distributed. We distributed a survey that the state allowed us to do to try and collect that data, because it used to get collected through free and reduced lunch form, which nobody does anymore. So we were able to increase our numbers 179 students, which is huge. So if you look at the bottom of that page, which tells you sort of the adjustments that you get in relationship to these populations of students that the department provides additional funding for, that is up $1.4 million, almost $1.5 million. Then if you go to the third page, there's no page numbers on it, they don't give it. Two main drivers in this section 3, other subsidized costs, is special ed and transportation. There's several other areas where it went up, but those two areas were the most significant increases. And that has to do with, I think, really accurate reporting, financial reporting, which last year we were on the cusp of being able to do well. Now we have it fully under control. And we have additional students in special ed that require additional services. So that part of the formula is up $1 million. So these aren't all individual pockets of money that all add up, but they all contribute to the final amount. We keep going. So if you remember last year, there's lots of red, right? There was lots of red. So the first red you see is on this next page, which is the local share part. And it's green and it's red, because it's good news and not great news. So the local contribution is up. The required local contribution is up $331,000. However, the mill rate is down. So it's not a full increase as it might have been last year. The valuation of the towns has still gone up. I think it's important to remember, however, that we ask our towns for much more than this. So this by itself won't be an automatic increase to the towns. It's when we look at the full budget, right? So overall, our state subsidy coming back this year is going to be $2,181,000. Last year, it was $357,000. That's all I have.
Okay. Waiting for applause there, but
I almost cried yesterday. Oh my God, I was like, oh, when it came out, she's texting me, I'm like, don't stop, wait until I get there. I want to be able to look at it. And, you know, we've double checked, and I will just say, this is preliminary, it could change. They're not gonna take $1 million from us. Could they take 50 or 100,000? Possibly, you know, depending. Last year, they discovered some errors and it changed at the last minute. If you recall, initially our increase was $145,000. But it's not going to be $1 million. Like, that's just too large of an error. So there we go.
does anyone have questions on that?
Sorry, I couldn't show it to you guys. It's still not showing up. I don't know.
Just before we completely move on from your report, I think it'd be great if you could touch on the positions, PBS coordinators, in the consent agenda coming up.
Yep, so those are positions we've had. They're stipended positions. We just have not had job descriptions for them. We've had, like, we know what the job descriptions are. They just haven't been written and provided in place.
And
So-
just for Anthony's benefit, we had a conversation about this before, just the the acronym PBIS. I think a lot of people know it, especially you folks in the education community. I say it all the time. I think it's helpful just to say it out loud again for others.
Positive behavioral interventions and supports. And I'm not sure that this is complete. I only have the front page.
Maybe copies. You guys have a back page on that one?
Let me go through it.
Never got it.
There's supposed to be a back page? I thought you were looking at the front page, so I did not make copies of that.
Okay.
I'm gonna get copies. And do it. Have Shannon do it. Sorry about that.
Yeah. One more. Well, just double side them both.
Yeah, just make sure we get the backside. They're individual documents.
Oh, then I guess, we're gonna
Oh, maybe here, I'm sorry.
quickly.
13.
This is coming right up to, part of the consent agenda. We sure there's no more questions? Okay, good.
I thought they were just single.
When I
pages, so
started
didn't
looking
count.
down, I was like, oh, no, it's not up here. Sorry.
My apologies again. I think you guys got the full amount in the pre-backup, the full document. Yeah, not in this.
In our email. Yeah.
I mean, I would just like to thank you and Gabby for doing all that work and Martha for doing the legwork on recalculating that. So maybe you want Martha to know.
Yes, I told her, I'm like, look at this number, you did this, she goes, no, you just told me that you had, I'm like, no, this is hours and hours of work. Going up.
And it's nice when you do that, your hours and hours of work have such a big impact on us.
Because I was not sure what that was. Probably sometime in February, the last one last year came out in March. So as the legislature sort of like deals with bills and things like that.
This year is tighter. They have to be done.
Yeah, it's not a full session.
Yeah, there's a certain day they have to be done by. I want to say something.
Yeah, so I think you haven't narrowed down budget. Right, yeah, you had it, you had it. I'll work on it. They got my original. I don't have that problem. Yeah, no, it's yeah.
So kind of coming back together now, we all have the full complete packet. We did get those in our email, so hopefully folks had a chance to review that before now, but we now have the full copies in hand, which brings us on to our consent agenda. Now, we have 2 items on the consent agenda tonight. To remind folks, these items are to be acted upon collectively unless any board member asks that one of these items be acted upon individually. So anyone can pull one of these items. The 2 items are 8.1 is a review and adoption of the superintendent recommended job descriptions. These 2 PBIS job descriptions we just were handed, one for the universal team coordinator and the other one for the advanced tiers team coordinator. The other item on the consent agenda is 8.2, consideration and acknowledgement of curriculum and policy committee recommended second reading and adoption. So this is the second reading and the adoption of this policy. JKAA, use of physical restraint and seclusion and regulations. JKAAR, procedures on physical restraint and seclusion. Would anyone like to pull any of these items from the agenda?
I'd be possibly the 8.2.
Pull 8.2. Okay, we'll bring 8.2 out and put it in before our executive sessions.
10.3.5.
10, yes, 10.3.5. And PBIS coordinators remain. I assume unless anyone wants to pull those. Okay. Consent agenda is on the table. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Bree, seconded by Peter. All those in favor? Unanimous. Moving on to item 10.1 in our new business is a presentation by our district instructional coaches. Looks like to step up and.
This seemed very easy.
Yeah.
Oh, you could stand on this side or come over to this side.
Yeah, what do you got first, Dave?
Okay. And I'm going to be able to, yeah.
Okay.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. All right, come on. It's true. The guy at the finance meeting here.
So I'm very excited tonight because the last time you heard about instructional coaching was from me, and it is one of my favorite things. However, I am excited that the coaches, 4 out of 5 of our coaches are here. We currently do not have an instructional coach here at Leeds Central School, but when it's going to be here next year, I just know it. So, with the transitions that were happening here, we had it posted and no one applied, so we actually decided to wait until the spring when we'll have more opportunities. And so, without further ado, I am going to be in charge of the slides and sit down, and our coaches, and we have a few teachers here tonight too, which is very exciting. So, all right.
So this is me, I'm Alicia Segoy, I'm the coach at Levitt.
No, you can, I mean,
Some
so,
fun facts
so
about
you
me.
can read, I thought it was important that you see, the educational background. All of our coaches have master's degrees, as a minimum, and then they all have had, teaching experience as well as leadership experience. So you'll notice similarities on the slides, in terms of that. They also have a certification from the Maine Partnership for Comprehensive Literacy through the University of Maine, which is a year-long course. It's more than a course, it's actually 3 courses, 9 credits.
Yeah, like two. One of them was, it ended up being 9 credits total, right?
Okay,
For the year.
so 9 credits. It's a whole year's
Yeah.
worth of work while they're working. So, okay. Now for the good stuff, Alicia.
Okay. So I wanted to spotlight some of the work that I did this first semester, which was in the math, in 2 math classes, which was a bit of a stretch, I thought, for me, because my background as an English teacher. But I learned so much, and I'm so excited about the work that the 2 teachers that I work with that we did. So it all started in October. We went to the Adamant Conference. And the books that I have right there, Productive Math Struggle and Building Thinking Classrooms, which is the one that Teresa mentioned that she's reading. Both of those authors were there as keynote speakers, and they were excellent keynote speakers. So the 2 math teachers that I was with, they wanted to get Building Thinking Classrooms, which is by Peter Liljedahl, who has become like my new favorite. Like I love that writer. So they wanted to take the book and use it to kind of, I don't want to say change, but definitely revise, I guess, the way that they approach teaching. The book Building Thinking Classrooms is just about how we can, Peter Liljedahl calls it defronting the classroom. And a lot of it is the learning becomes collaborative with the students. The students are kind of like learning together. And it's also visual. So this picture that I have is one of the math classes. This is typically, I'd say 3/4 of the period. This is where students are. They start with, they're called thin slices. And it starts with things that the kids already know how to do. So if this was math, it might start with like 3 + 4. And then the students would be like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. And then you build off of that skill until you get to something that's a little more intense and maybe new learning. So the picture shows the students working on a thin slice. They're working together. They're working on the board so that we can see what they're doing around the whole classroom. Some of them even get to write on windows with some special markers, which is really exciting to see. They're excited about that.
And they can collaborate, they're working in usually groups of 2 or 3, but they can collaborate with other groups to check answers. I wrote that it increases engagement, but I would also say that it definitely increases ownership too over learning. So the learning isn't the teacher standing up front of the room and saying like, here's how you solve this problem. Step 1, you do this. Step 2, you do this. Instead, the students are figuring out the steps together by working together in groups or asking other groups, what did you do for step 2? I got stuck. And then figuring it out. And then at the end of class, that's where the active notes comes in. We do this move called consolidation. And it's basically the teacher saying, okay, so what were the big takeaways from today? And the teacher can use it to review certain groups and what they did, correct. If there's a misunderstanding, they get corrected during their group work. And then do some sort of exit ticket where the students write down their understandings, write down their new learning, and that becomes their notes. So it's kind of like flipping the script on teaching instead of at the beginning of class giving notes, then having the students practice together, then having them do the work on their own. You start with the students working together to solve the problems, utilizing problem-solving skills, collaborative learning, and then you give the notes at the end, but the notes are provided by the students so that they write down what they know in the language that they know. And that's the transfer piece. The hope is that they take, because they're learning the content while they're problem solving it together, that they're able to transfer it because it's more sticky in their brain because they learned it by talking, and they learned it by doing. And it worked. So I started with one of the teachers we started with a brand new unit that this teacher was going to use for their midterm. So the unit had, I want to say there were 8 sections in it. And he wanted to do, like, we did each section in the unit and then all 8 sections were going to be on the midterm. And the true test was that first section that we did way in the beginning, are they going to remember it for the midterm? Like, is that going to be learning that will have been done all the way in like October? Are they going to remember it for the midterm? And guess what? They did. They did really well in their midterms. So I actually had to, for the pre-assessment that we did, it was mostly meeting or mostly almost there, not quite meeting the standard. For the midterm, it was all meeting, but mostly exceeding the standard. Pretty exciting stuff. So the 2 teachers that I worked with, they wanted to be here, but they were unable to make it because of other things they had to do. So they wrote a little blurb about what they did that they wanted me to pass on. And actually, funny story, when I was talking to these 2 teachers, another teacher happened to be there and was like, can I write one too about the work that we did? This is a different teacher that I worked with this semester. And I was like, sure, why not? So I have 2 of these for you. I'll just put them out here.
Alicia, do you also want to talk a little bit about the transfer to other content areas?
Sure. Yeah. So while I was working with the math department with the Peter Liljedahl stuff, while I was reading the book, it's called Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics. But while I was reading the book, I was like, this is just good teaching. Like, you could do this in any content area. So I did get a couple of teachers to give it a try in their classes. One of them was an English teacher. And it was really cool. I should have put pictures up there to have kids at the board analyzing poetry together. So we had like the poem, I laminated it, I enlarged it and laminated it. And it was really cool. They went up to the board and they were underlining lines and writing what it meant. And it was cool just to be able to step back and watch them do that learning in that content area. I just started today a cycle with a phys ed teacher. And this phys ed teacher was interested in this too. So we'll see if it works in phys ed. I know it will. I know it will. The last thing that I want to say, I want to make sure John Sangiovanni, who is the white book, Productive Math Struggle, that he gets his moment too. The math department also, we're doing a book study right now with that book. So, and they very much go together. Productive Math Struggle is more about just the problem solving and those skills that students need, how to encourage that. Because one of the things that we found during the Building Thinking classrooms, it was really hard to step back and watch students problem solve and watch them struggle, right? Watch them be like, okay, how do we do this? And not go in and be like, okay, the first thing you do is, step back and just be like, okay, they're gonna figure it out. It was really hard we're teachers, we wanna fix. So the productive math struggle, is helping us with that bit.
Right.
Don't have any questions?
I was really nervous. I wasn't expecting that.
Alicia, you're great. Great.
Alicia.
Yeah, question.
What do you do with students that are not good at group work and don't collaborate well with peers? Is
So-
there a model for them?
That's such a good question. When so one of the teachers that we first started this with, we had a student that was like, I don't like working with other people. I like to do it by myself. And we were like, okay, just sit back and the first class that student did, we did say like, maybe you could just get up and like show your thinking, and did it. But the second class, something really weird happened. The student was sitting watching the two of his classmates working, and all of a sudden he jumped up and he was like, no, you do it like this. And that was it. That was the only time that we had, and I think just honoring and giving the students some grace. I don't know, I just feel like as humans, we're problem solvers and we like to think, and then we like to show off and know the answer. And this kind of encourages that. Yeah.
All right.
All right, up next, my name is Mallory Murphy, and I am the instructional coach at Turner Elementary School. A couple of things about me are up there. I actually should have added my education. I am going back for a certificate right now, for PBIS, actually. So it's a 3-credit credential, so I'll have my credential in PBIS. And I'm going through the state right now for their Train the Trainers program as well with that. I forgot. That's okay. So I am similar to Alicia, and I also want to introduce Jason Crow. He's a 6th grade teacher, and I've been working with Jason since I got to Turner Elementary School. So this cycle that I was in was more with his content partner, Adri Wilkinson, but she could not be here, and Jason volunteered to come and speak to this because we were able to do it through the whole 6th grade. And as I'm talking, we integrated math and ELA, and it's really awesome. And I've got to hand these around to show you the books that these kids created, and talk to you a little bit about the project. When we were doing this, I'm gonna give this one to Teresa to start. I know she'll love Taylor, so and I'll just start this one over here.
You guys need to look at it. I'll look at it tomorrow.
So I have to say that one of the great things too about being a coach is when you go to these conferences. So Jason went and Adri went and a couple of my 4th grade math teachers went as well. But just talking and getting ideas, this is where this idea came from, was at this Adamant conference in October. So Adri looks at me, Jason will go along with the flow, but Adri was like, yeah, let's do a cycle, let's do this together, because her background is more in math, where literacy was definitely my strength as well. We wanted it to be all 6th grade, to make sure that they all had this opportunity to create this. So after the conference, all of us got together and we created our model for the students to see. So we brainstormed and we developed our own model and shared this with the kids. And when we created this model, we created it using 6th grade standards, because as ELA goes for the standards, we are really focusing on what's the purpose and who's the audience. So we knew that the audience was our 6th grade students, so we could tailor the math towards 6th grade math standards. Now for this project, what I did is I pulled all the 2nd and 3rd grade math standards, and the 6th graders had to choose a 2nd or 3rd grade math standard to use in their books. Because we are going to the primary school in February and we're sharing these books with the 2nd graders at the primary school. So we're practicing with the 3rd graders in our building before we go to the primary school. So we're incorporating the speaking and listening ELA standards along with writing and then their reading. So really making this, incorporating all the standards that we can. And Jason, I'll let you speak to the kids and how they were in the classroom about this project.
The enthusiasm was great, because, you know, with the way we do it at Turner, it's like, we have the ELA teacher, we have myself, but that's math and content right now. So like, sometimes you only see half the kid, right, what they're thinking. So it's like the kids that don't always like math, this project really like, whoa, they're great writers, they're great, they love to write, they have so creative thoughts. So I saw that, and that was the great thing about that. And working with a partner, you know, collaborating together. Most of them do, but they have a choice. They don't have to work together. There are a few students who want to do their own book, and that's fine, because it's a creative process. But they're so enthusiastic about it, which is great. And I will say that I was hesitant at first. It does take a long time. We did it for like a week and a half. We stopped our curriculum for a little bit. And now we're going back to curriculum, so now it's I'm done, now what? And they always want to get right to it, so it's like, because they have a few more weeks before we go to the primary school, we are gonna practice with the third graders, like Nari said, and then they keep asking, when do we go, when do we go? And it's like, oh my God, it's gonna be soon. So it was nice to see kids that I want to see, I think teach all subjects, now it's like, oh, that kid loves ELA, and I love to see that, because I like ELA too, so it's nice to have the cross-curricular, you know, projects like this. It really is exciting that way. And it's nice that they get to see the second and third grade standards and see, you know, Mallory, of course, is great with giving us a standard. She gave us a rubric. She does all that work behind the scenes. So when we need something, she has that advice for us. So that's why she comes in. It does that part.
And I did support more like in Adri's room with reading the books with the kids and really making sure. So my in-class work was more with Adri, but we always planned all together.
Yeah, and you know, they get to work on the book, not just in my classroom, but next door, this is Knowlton's room, that she does helps them with the revising, the editing, the ELA part too, so they can see this project is not just a math project, it is both. And I think that's really important for kids to see, that everything is connected to the curriculum. So, yeah.
And Avery reached out to me because she was sharing these science books that match curriculum, and she's like, I would love to do some science. So we're just trying to think about other ways to bring in literacy and other contents as well.
Questions? Thanks much.
So I'm Elaine Gammon. I'm the instructional coach at the Turner Primary School. Cannot wait to see those books, put that on my calendar so I can go into second grade and join you guys for that. So I have also done the coaching program, masters, also take on a lot of leadership roles in the school as well. So you have heard lots or two situations of coaching cycles. And as coaches, we also provide a lot of professional development for our teachers and our staff. It's very important that we include all staff, our ed techs as well, because they're also doing a lot of teaching for our children as well. So at Turner Primary, one of the exciting ways that we're doing it is book studies. And so I put pictures up there, but I also have to bring them as well. So one of our school goals this year was to improve comprehension for reading. And as many of you probably know, pre-K to 2, we really focus on the foundations of reading. So we have the phonics and awareness, we have fluency we're working on, and as they get older, we want to continue to work on comprehension as well, so that when they continue on to the other schools, they have that foundation to work on as well. So Kim Fuller, our principal, and I picked this one first. So we picked Reading Strategies 2.0. A lot of people are familiar with the author, Jennifer Cerebello. And she has writing strategies. She has a lot of different strategy books. So we knew it was something familiar to our staff. So we started a book study. And so a book study is teachers volunteer to meet before or after school. We choose before school because of our school hours. So we meet before school for 3 times for an hour. And we read the book, we do some protocols, we do discussions, we do activities. We will, with the reading strategy book, we're going to take some stuff back into the classroom, try it out, share it in our group as well. Very excited to do this. But then one of my pre-K teachers came to me and said, That's great, but I also saw this book, and this might be more appropriate for our preschool staff. And then we brainstormed that kindergarten teachers also are still working on some preschool skills for some of their students. So I had a group say, hey, I want to do this book. So I started this, and then teachers jumped on and said, hey, let's do another one. So I actually have 2 book study groups going, which was not the plan originally. And I'm so very excited about. So between the 2 groups, I have 12 participants. I have ed techs as well as teachers. We do 3 hours total. They do through the recertification committee. They get 3 contact hours towards recertification. So it's great for them as well. This PD can be used in the classroom. They're going to take these strategies back and try them. This book is great. It also can be used right up through high school. And we've had conversations about how we can incorporate other staff to do that as well. So it's not just for my primary school, it can be for any grades. And the coaches and I have those discussions as well about that. We do a lot of collaboration between staff. It's wonderful to have the ed techs part of our book studies as well. And so we're doing those right now. The hope is that after February vacation, we'll do some more, and we'll continue to pick topics that the teachers want to learn more about. And we're always taking suggestions for books as well. I know as coaches, we do a lot of discussion of books. Teresa always has some new book that she's reading, as you can see. And so we always have new books to share. The district is wonderful about buying these books for staff. That's an incentive for them as well, because they get these books and they don't have to pay for them out of their pockets. And so it's just a wonderful collaboration for our staff. And it's a wonderful way to include some professional development. They don't have to leave for the day. They're not out of their classrooms, and we can do, as coaches, we can do book studies in our schools. We embed this professional development. So all schools have been doing them. I just decided to do it because I knew they were doing cycles and sharing that aspect of our job. And another part of our job is these book studies and other professional development. Just one kind of that.
Thank you so much. Any other questions here?
Can I just say a little something about your school? Like they weren't crazy about book studies, and now this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal.
Yes.
Because my school loved book studies the first year I started, and then. So I'm going to talk about a cycle. I'll get into that. My name is Amy Musso. I'm an instructional coach at Green. This is my 2nd year, and I've been at Green for 13 years. So this is a new role for me, but I do have teaching experience, as you can see, and some leadership experience. I'm pretty diverse as far as where I've been and what I've done. I have a lot of the technology background. At some point, I thought maybe I would go into that. However, I do like this role almost better. There is an instructional tech coach position that I could take elsewhere, but I'm like, there's not that academic piece that you with the students as much. So I really like where I'm at. The cycle we're going to talk about involves 4th graders. We are in one classroom only. And this is a classroom that I brought Carla along. She was very gracious to come along with me. She's a 1st-year teacher in a classroom that she's taught PT before. And so we have 13 students, and we've been kind of going through the list and figuring out where they're at. With my very much big background from the last 2 years of, I've just been submerged into like literature and books and reading and enrichment and PD, and I'm just kind of gotten really into the science of reading. And this book that we had done a book study on called The Artfully Teaching the Science of Reading had suggestions after suggestions of ways to improve reading comprehension, vocabulary, fluency, phonics, phonemic awareness. And those really are critical pieces that we were seeing that the 4th graders were lacking. So one of the critical pieces about reading is you learn to read before you read to learn. And some of these 4th graders did not have those basic components. And unfortunately, now we are getting to the point where we can really install, like basically get those core pieces installed for our younger kids, K-2, but the 4th graders didn't get that. So I feel like we're catching them up. So Carla was gracious and came to me and said, what can we do? So we really kind of turned this into an action research study. That's what she likes to call it. So I like to call it. So these students are not going to be harmed in the process. There are things but we are going to assess them, find baseline data. Which part is that piece missing? Some of them are missing comprehension more than anything. Even then, we're going to dive into what part of comprehension. Some of them are missing the basic phonemic awareness. They can read and they can understand, but they can't manipulate phonemes and they can't play with words. Do like those little limericks, you know, where you like substitute sounds. Some are really struggling with fluency. You read to them, they can understand it, they can decode all day long. But if you try to have them read to you with a natural voice, they can't do it. So we're finding those gaps, trying to, I don't want to say plug, but try to remedy those gaps, try to get them a little bit higher, and then we're going to start giving them passages and books, which is where they need to be. Because when we do NWAs, as you probably are aware, those questions are long. We have text passages that are very complicated, and many times the students don't know where to start. And so we're seeing a huge gap between instruction and testing. And we don't want to teach to the test, but we want to give them those tools. So I gave a little graphic also about the cycle, similar to what Mallory was talking about. And Alicia, we start with our assessing. We set a goal and we say, we want to do this. What do they need? And then we start by planning. We say, okay, we're going to do this lesson. And so I'm in Carla's room 2 to 3 times a week. And we do these small groups where we focus on one or another different subject. And a lot of times we have an ed tech that can help as well. So we can really focus on 2 to 3 students at a time, working on those different concepts. And hopefully we haven't got there, we're in the middle, but we're going to reassess and then we're going to probably like adapt and change as we go. And then hopefully as our cycle ends up, we'll do a final post-assess and look at NWA data as well. So I'm really excited to see what kind of things we will see from this work together. But as a coach coming in and then having this opportunity that this is offered to me, this is perfect. This is what I've been trained for. Our training was in literacy. And we had, I'm gonna say like 2 or 3 crash course days in decisive reading. And then I've taken upon myself to do more research and do more courses. So when I came to Carla and talked about it, she's like, perfect, this is what we need. And working with the K-2 teachers, that's what they're asking for as well. Teach us more about this. What is it that kids need to learn to read? Like building blocks, one after another, so that when they become 5th and 6th graders, and what's going. So I'll let Carla speak to how it's been for her, because it's been a great process. Yeah, 2 of us together.
Fun. I too do not want to use bifocals.
You can't stop it, it's coming regardless.
Fight it all you can. So I wanted to make sure that when I came before you tonight, that I covered the pieces that I thought were really important. So I wrote a few things down. So I hope that, well, here goes. So I feel like it's really an exciting time for the students and teachers in Green and our district. And I'm here to share how my instructional coach, Amy, is making a difference in my classroom. I've been working with 4th grade readers and spellers this year, as you heard, and I do love it. My students often work in small groups of similar reading abilities, like Amy has mentioned. However, this is what I really was noticing, that students who were scoring and testing on their TCs in the same level, and they were in the same group, they just were not dealing with the same issues, even though they're testing at a similar level. So it was true for my struggling readers, but for my gifted students as well. And I have a GT background, so that really was fascinating to me, that what was qualifying them as gifted was so different, even though maybe they were still in an ELA background. So that's when I began to visit with Amy. She started talking to me about the science of reading, which is a 50-year research project that I became aware of. And it's about unlocking the way the brain learns to read. So fun, so cool for a geek like me to talk to a geek like her. So in light of our conversations,
You can only imagine those conversations.
it's ridiculous. Amy suggested that we start by assessing my students for the 5 aspects of reading, which she put up there: phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And we found out what we needed to know. So we could provide focused and, dare I say, laser-like instruction. Based on those students' strengths and weaknesses, we formed 5 reading groups. Amy suggested these little activities that would target those specific reading needs within each group. And you know what? I can already see, we just started, but I can already see it's going to be a game changer. It's almost like a stop ship where we're gaining momentum and I can see the ship is moving. We're just not full steam yet. But I think the freight train's coming. So what made Amy's suggestions even more effective is that my ed techs, and I do have one, sometimes two coming into my classroom because I have a lot of special ed students in my classroom, that they're learning about the science of reading as in real time. They're hearing what we're doing, they're hearing the why of what we're doing and how to identify what's going on with their small group. So it's almost like an exponential return, you know? Okay, so the ed techs are now in the process of being able to hear and correct those small reading habits that prevent student growth. So it's important because the continuity of the message and process in my room creates a team focused on a unified game plan to reach our goal. And to a sports-oriented district, this is where it happens. This is my field, okay? So Amy's impact's remarkable because although her focus is student growth, we professionals and paraprofessionals are growing too. It's really cool. But as you know, I need to cater to all the students, low and high. And so what I love about the research and activities that Amy's brought to my classroom is that now she's given me a framework. I have those 5 pieces, the phonics, the phonemic awareness, the vocabulary, the fluency, and the comprehension piece, so that I can use that information to evaluate anything I have, and I can take one off topic. I can take this information for my entire class, gifted and grade level students, and I can focus on one of those topics, even though maybe I'm using the same book. I can say, okay, I can pull this out of this book study. I can put phonics. I can work on verbal reasoning for my higher students. So it's a transferable skill. It's not just she comes in for one cycle, we're done, we use that book, but it's just a broad, useful base of knowledge. So when using an Amy-inspired activity, one of my high ability students said, "This is hard, but it's fun," with kind of a confused look on his face, like, you know, hard and fun shouldn't be in the same vocabulary. But that tells me that his brain is growing and that he's getting the challenge that he needs. So I appreciate Amy's practical contributions that are cutting edge and based on hard science, not just good guesses. And that's where I felt like I was at. Like I could identify this murky, misty world of reading and I could see problems, but I didn't have the skill to be able to accurately identify what exactly was going on with this similar group of readers, but weird things going on with each one. So the resources she has given me have been incredibly helpful, but more importantly, I can use the science of reading to differentiate anything I bring to my classroom. I would take an instructional coach over an expensive workshop any day, because I believe the impact she makes is going to have a ripple effect, which will be life-changing for my students and even our teaching community for years to come. The end.
Thank you.
We do have one more instructional coach who was not able to be here tonight, and she put up her education teaching experiences, and leadership. Sarah Bodway is at Kurt Middle School. And then, like I said, coming in 2024. So, thank you. I don't know. If anybody has-
No, I just want to thank you for coming out tonight and speaking with us. I know it's a lot of you and a lot of work, so thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anthony. Yeah.
Amy, could you remind me where the 50-year studies, where's that coming from?
When you
Author
reference
that?
50 years, it's not
Yes.
just one study, it's a multiple of many times, and it's actually changed over the years. One of our training actually talked about the process that's happened. It's kind of been a pendulum or a wheel, like comes back around, and so there's been a lot of direct instruction, and then there's been more like, the small group or maybe even more where you're just kind of immersed into reading the whole, what do they call it? The whole language. Thank you. And now it's kind of coming back to the parts of the brain. They have MRIs that show what lights up when a person is reading. So it's like, that's pretty objective. There's no argument with that. So that's kind of what we're basing it on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you and I are fighting here.
Right? Thank you.
Before we get to, to move on to item number.
In regards to this, we get stopped. How is it? Dispersed throughout the district? We saw,
Instructional coaching?
yes, how, we've heard some very in-depth and sound like some awesome programs being done in specific classrooms and specific parts of grade levels. But, one of the comments we made over a lot of our policies is to keep it consistent for the district. So how are we dispersing like the math out of one school to the English out of another?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably Teresa, you're probably best to answer that one, but I think the goal is having an extreme coach in each building.
But to incorporate how are we making sure the best we can? That because we have 4 instructional coaches with primarily four different presentations, 4 different areas they are focusing on, give or take. So how is, are we not, and I know we're not, but are we not focusing on the math that?
I have thoughts
What
about
school-
that, but I think Teresa, you're probably better.
So, I just want to make sure, how are we incorporating this so that it gets dispersed to all the kids?
We were really intentional when we selected instructional coaching and we utilized a student-centered model. And the expectation that all new teachers work with a coach at least in one cycle. And what is happening is it's not the same. You might see math scores that don't look great for our district, but that doesn't mean that students in one class aren't excelling at that. So it's really based on the students that are in the class and the teacher, like Carla identified. I was really like in need of some help to teach them in reading. So I don't know, they're not lockstep. We don't have math coaches. We don't have literacy coaches. They are instructional coaches so that they can work with all teachers. Like I think Alicia just said, she's starting with a PE teacher. All teachers get their expertise.
So add 2 things. So one, you heard Elaine reference the school goals. All of them are working towards the school goals because and teachers are making goals connected to that as well. And they also meet regularly as a group to calibrate what they're doing and making sure that they're offering consistency across the district in terms of services and what kinds of things they're providing to teachers.
Because that's one of my greater concerns is, we have some excellent people, but just want to make sure that their excellence is being spread. If that makes sense.
Well,
And not
we
focused
take
in,
more, Peter.
Huh?
We'll take more. Alicia's got a lot of teachers.
We can absolutely take all of the volunteers that have.
I think, volunteers are always a great idea. I think the importance is that they all have a year of similar training. And like Harry mentioned, I supervise all of the coaches. We meet monthly and then I meet with them one-on-one each month. And then quarterly, we have one coming up next week. We meet with all the coaches, all the principals, and Carrie and I. And weekly, all the coaches meet with their principal. Did I forget anything?
Yeah. Can I just add that, so I do cycles in math, literacy. It totally depends on what the teacher feels the students need the most. So if they have a group of students that are struggling with writing, I've done them in writing as well. And so it's totally based on what the kids need and what the data shows and what the teacher feels is most beneficial for the students. So one class might get only literacy because that's the area that they need to grow. And then another grade level class may get math or writing or PE or art or music and in any area we can support them.
And this is just a snapshot. So like we rely on teachers to talk to other teachers and they'll take that learning back and share. So like if I work with a teacher in math, a lot of times it ends up being the entire grade level. We'll get some of the benefit of it. So that is helpful. And we hope that will spread.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Any more questions, thoughts around instructional coaches before we move on? Yeah.
I don't know if it's like my instant, but I've actually been in a class where I like helped out a lot, and I've always been struggled with math, but like the way we like broke things down and like process things like helped out a lot. So the students recognize that this is what just the teachers do.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah. All right, moving on to item 10.2. So this is effectively a motion to backdate the reclassification of the special educational support assistant to administrative secretary. Will be from the start of school year through November 10th. This does not come with a recommendation from the finance committee. Does anyone want to make that motion? Okay, is there a second? Second. So the session is now on the floor. I don't know, finance came from the finance committee without recommendation, but I hopefully the finance committee can give us some description.
Actually going to turn her over to Gabby.
Ah.
She has like the numbers and everything, and I admittedly do not have them in front of me.
So this position was created for this school year. Was a new position for the special education department. We anticipated that they would be acceptable positions as office assistants, based on those job descriptions. After some of the individuals who took on the positions were in the roles for a little while, we had different things brought to our attention. Carrie had sat with several of them, had discussions about different tasks. We reviewed the job descriptions again, and it was determined that they really should have been classified as administrative assistants rather than office assistants, which are two different positions. So we had brought it to the board to have them reclassified as administrative assistants, which everyone approved. So we made it effective for November 10th. However, since these individuals were doing the same work since the beginning of the school year, it was then requested that the board consider backdating that change from office assistant to administrative assistant. What this would mean would be a total of roughly $1,500 from the beginning of the school year to November 10th between salaries, FICA, Medicare, workers' compensation.
Okay, is there still a reason it came unrecommended, or is there anything you want to add about the conversation we had?
I'm waiting for the leader and then I can check.
No, I was just gonna clarify, it was 3 positions. Correct, and
Only 2 of them
2
were
of them
filled.
Okay,
One of them was filled after November 10th.
and so the $1,500
Was for 2.
was for 2, which it's not in
No, it's actually,
overdraw of our.
no, and it's actually from a grant. It's not the
That's
general
right,
budget
yes.
as well, but
It's fair.
you know, it's still funding, so it's relevant.
Here,
This is really not a monetary thing. And I spoke against it and voted against it, why I didn't come to the recommendation. And it had nothing to do monetarily. It all has to do with precedence. In my opinion. We're taking an existing position. And so these 3 folks, in this case, 2 folks, I don't think it was hired for their position. These 2 folks applied for a job and they knew what was requested of the job. That work turned out to be more detailed than they thought it should be, but it was the job description, it was there. They did the job. They did a little bit more than the job. But it is what they were hired to do. At that rate. After discussion, it was changed that the job needs to change, which we basically, in that case, we deleted a job. And we created a new position. So these positions, in a sense, were eliminated. And a new position was created. To fit the needs more appropriately. In my book, that means it's a whole new position, it's a whole new change. You know, these people, and I don't want to come across as downplaying that. I'm just thinking of the bigger picture here. These folks, in many regards, I have to be careful here, almost should have had to reapply for the new job. To a point, because, you know, it's a whole new position. And they started, the minute it was understood and that it was created, they got paid accordingly. But I'm just nervous that if we go back and if we change a position mid-year, because of any series of events that decided us, you know, we did it this year once already. With, you know, it was done through a contract thing, so there's a slightly different world. I'm just thinking of the bus drivers. Then all of a sudden it opens up some discussion of, well, is it going retroactive? So I just have a concern about precedents in this kind of thing, and with the fact that we're dealing with, it wasn't like we were hiding anything. They hired, they agreed, they moved on. The position was changed, new wage, we moved on.
I completely understand what you're saying about setting a precedent. You know, if a job ends up being harder, we can't just rewind and pay everybody more. I think my feeling towards this specific position is different because it was brand new, never existed before. We had no idea what it was going to entail. And so we kind of created this position because of the large support that, you know, our special ed admins and teachers needed in order to retain them, because it's a rough gig. And so there was no precedent before that. It's not like we hired an ed tech where we've had an ed tech job description forever. We know, we kind of, you know, the state tells us what ed techs can do. It's given to us by law. We created these positions and it was brand new. We didn't know it. So to me, the precedent that we're setting right now, acknowledging that the job was harder than we originally thought it would be and giving them credit for that, would be the precedent I would want to set as a board.
So I'm curious if from day one, from the beginning of the school year through November 10, these people were being asked to do things that were not in their jobs.
No, we didn't change the job description. They've been doing this job since the beginning. We misclassified it. I consider this to be, in terms of Rebecca and I trying to decide that job description, the tasks that they were being asked to do were bigger than we initially thought they were. And that is why. So the job description did not change when we reclassified them. They're doing the same job they were doing from day one. We were not, from our view, which is why we brought it to you, we were not paying them appropriately for the job that we gave them. Yeah. So this is a conversation, I recommend this. I think this is a really good idea. I think it is excellent labor relations. The association had some concerns about changing this job description. You mentioned that idea of having to reapply, but because there were current employees who had transitioned into those jobs, they did not want to pursue that, but they did have concerns about that process. And so they brought to us the idea that this would be a fair thing to do, since we were not changing the job, but we were simply acknowledging that we were asking people to do something bigger than what we thought. So I think it is a good decision to do. I think it's good labor relations, and I think it shows that we recognize that this job has been the exact job they've been doing from day one, and that the compensation should follow that.
For what it's worth, I feel like I need to add that I think our special education staff is understaffed. I think they need as much support as possible. So having these folks do more and provide more support feels like what we need. You know, frankly, we need more effort there. And the dollars we were talking about are pretty nominal, right? There's not It's not a tremendous amount of money. And, as you heard Carrie say, it's our administration feels like it's their mistake in the beginning. So, this seems reasonable to me.
So to clarify, I think we are really just looking at reclassifying it by changing the name. So I don't know if this is a question that's going to Peter, I forget it, but the salary moving forward would be that newest, whatever they're getting paid now, right? Is that why you're saying?
No, they've already been reclassified.
Correct, but like moving forward, it will stay at
Correct.
that.
They're being paid their current rate that we read.
Okay, so we're really just saying it's a name change, right? Like you were saying, it's not really a financial thing at this point.
Yeah, it was a position, the position changed by a classification. So it
Yeah.
went from a secretary to
Office
assistant.
assistant to admin secretary.
To admin secretary, so.
But we're just
so
trying
falls
to catch
under-
up with ourselves now.
Yeah,
By making
we
sure the
made the
name matches
classification
the price
change
tag.
back on the 10th. of
Correct.
November.
They've
And
already been
the
reclassified.
motion in front of us is, should we retroactively start at the beginning of the year? Not just when we reclassified them on the 10th, but
Okay,
because they've been doing it all year, should we also extend that back to the beginning of the year?
And part of my thought process was, and again, nothing against these people, nothing against the money, I wish everything was a small amount. It's just the idea of we're dealing with, you were hired to do a job, nothing was hid from you, the job was described, we heard that the job description was given, they applied, and for a rate, and they were hired. It was then decided that job, okay, it's more than we think, so we're going to move it forward as a new job description, as a new job classification, just happens to be the same description, and in which case it's worth more. Again, some question upon, it kind of goes to the question, well, if this job was at this new rate when it was first done, and these two people took the job, how was, board other people have applied if it's more money? I'm just trying to think of the overall bigger picture of how it looks to go backwards. Also, yes, I really appreciate these people who did a well above and beyond and did a great thing doing this work. And after we realized it, we moved them forward and appreciated it. But we have people all throughout this district doing that right now. We have teachers all throughout this district who are putting in a lot more hours than the school day. But, so anyways, it's more of a, very rarely do we ever go backwards. Okay, great, I was 100% support of it in October, moving forward, but very rarely do we go backwards and say, okay, you guys did a good job, you did what you needed to do, we're gonna give you some extra money. Because to me, it's kind of like a bonus, and it's just something school districts don't really do. So was my thought.
You also have more to add on this.
And this is not in response to a complaint or a grievance, it's just,
It was a request.
it's just,
It was a request.
okay, it was.
Yeah, oh no, yeah, so it came from the association requested it in the conversation about this. And I thought it was a reasonable request, and I thought it demonstrated good labor relations and an understanding that we did not classify this position accurately. I understand that it feels like a bonus. I don't see it as a bonus. They're getting paid for what they already did.
This is kind of why I was torn in the meeting, because it's kind of like we do one thing for someone, but then like Peter's saying that there's so many teachers and so many staff members that are working over, doing so much extra all the time. It's like, where do you draw the line when it comes to looking at that? I understand that like job descriptions might change, but I'm kind of on Peter's side on the fact that this kind of feels kind of like off, to go back and try to reimbursed for something where, I mean, it is petty, but, you know, for a small amount, but there's many other people that I feel like
I'm just trying to mull this over, so, I hear what you're saying, right, like about how people work above and beyond. I am an educator, so not in this district anymore, but I am one of them. And I would love to get more money for the extra hours I spend. But I'm also kind of wondering if this is really about, we made a mistake and we need to honor that we made that mistake and we need to fix that mistake before moving forward. The other, positions like teachers or ed techs or bus drivers, like their job descriptions and the rate of pay for what they should be doing for their time, like that's been set, and that's not necessarily like, oh, we aren't making up those job descriptions new, right? So we do still expect everyone is going to work according to what the job description says, and there will always be someone or a handful of people that will go above and beyond. But I'm just kind of going back and forth thinking maybe this is something where we sort of have to rectify something that didn't go right, and we need to make it right now and be honorable in that. We certainly wish we could, as Peter said before, wish we could pay everybody a little bit extra. I'm just sort of going back and forth with the word bonus versus like honoring and rectifying something that needs to be fixed and being honorable in that manner too. And then move forward with it.
I'll add that I certainly understand what you're saying too, and I just think the novelty of this position and this year make this a more unique situation that hopefully isn't precedent setting, but anyone else? Ready to move on to a vote then? All those in favor of the motion, which is to backdate the reclassification, raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed?
They did. Thank you.
Right, moving on, item 10.3, which is a consideration and approval of the finance committee recommended October and November 2023 operating expenditure report. The motion on the floor for this. Bristol, is there a second? Second, Kyle. Discussion on the floor for the expenditure reports. Right. Yes, I love the expenditure reports. Okay. All right, then, all those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, moving on to item 10.35.
Go back again, we should spend more time on it. That's harder.
Well, you guys have a whole committee devoted to get this work, so.
No discussion is good discussion.
Right. So, we are now to item 10.3.5, which we have pulled, on the consent agenda. Just to get back to that, that is the consideration and acknowledgement of curriculum and policy committee, actually, to be consideration and approval of curriculum and policy committee recommended second reading and adoption of revised policies. This is JKAA, the use of physical restraint and seclusion regulations, JKAAR, procedures on physical restraint and seclusion. Is there a motion on the floor? Crystal, seconded by Anthony. Discussion around JKAA.
I do have a couple of questions, maybe not even questions. I was hoping that Rebecca would be, if I could just ask for a little bit of clarification. With the change in the definition for restraint and seclusion, and I guess, especially at an elementary level, and I have a middle schooler, is evacuating a room considered seclusion? And I guess more of a breakdown of, is some of this subject to an educator or a staff member's perception? If Carrie's in the classroom and she's got 20 years and she can see that something is about to go down, but it may not be something that could potentially seriously harm a
child, like hitting, biting, pinching, slapping, and asking the rest of the classroom to leave the room, where does that like leave someone in that room? And this does seem a little intense, like it obviously is a law and it needs to be followed, and I would never say, or I hope not that our board would not go against the law, for children in special education. So if you could just.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and then let me know.
I hope you know what I'm asking.
Yeah. Let me know if you have any other questions as well. So this is not a special education law, right? This is a law to protect all students and all staff that we have in our buildings. When you're looking at making a decision, that in this magnitude, and I think we talked a little bit at the curriculum policy meeting, it's a big deal to be putting your hands on a child. Because that may result in an injury of the staff, and it may result in injury or worse to the child that you're putting your hands on. One of the, we have what we do is safety care training, and that is a state approved curriculum that we use for students. It has de-escalation, and then part of some of the pieces that we do as well is we will potentially, if a student is escalating in their behavior, that student may be, sometimes we take little breaks or we'll offer them to leave the classroom. And all of that is part of their plan, their behavior plan or their crisis management intervention plan that they may have. And then if a student is not going to do that, then an alternative would be to remove that attention. Rather than removing the student from getting attention in the class, it may be removing the class so that student continues to not get that attention. The other thing it is when children or much like people, when they start behaving in a way that they know is unusual, inappropriate, it's unsafe, there's a level of potentially for students, there's a couple of things going on. Most often you'll have embarrassment, that they're embarrassed that their behavior is escalating to this point. They're embarrassed their classroom might be leaving without them. They might be embarrassed to leave the classroom as part of that. But then also you have a student who is not able to regulate themselves without having some sort of intervention, whether it's leaving with the class, leaving, an adult using, right, their safety care, de-escalation strategy is to be able to support that. You would never put hands on a child to avoid having them leave the room or avoid having the class leave the room. It's really when you're looking at imminent risk of serious bodily harm that is going to happen to that student is going to do to themselves, due to another peer, or due to another adult, where they would need to seek medical attention. This, I've been in special ed a long time, but most often you would assume that this does have an impact on students with IEPs, usually the most, because they are learning, much like we heard today, learning to read, write, and do math. Students also have to learn how to be learners in school, and they also have to learn how to interact in school and regulate the behaviors that they have. I think at the last board meeting, I did my presentation and I had showed you that we have an increase and related disabilities related to behaviors. And looking at that, I gave you really a passive example of a student who was avoiding doing what they needed to do because they were having a hard time regulating themselves. But that can also look very different for a student that their coping or their skill that they know, right, that works for them is to become loud and disruptive and potentially, unsafe during the classroom. Gives you a little bit of information, but this law has kind of gone back and forth. Risk, imminent risk, harm. They use all of those
words, and it goes, every couple of years, it goes through revisions. There is a very much like, contrary to what we kind of heard today, there's a large, population, of lobbyists that are against restraints and seclusions. And so this, every few years, and the state collects we submit data to the state on our, rates of seclusion, and vehicle, which will probably give your incidences for restraints. And so we submit that, but there's a large campaign to do away with restraints and seclusions, which I think is difficult. Because although, certainly I don't want to, that's the last thing we go to, is to put hands on children. At the same time, you need to also make sure all children and staff are safe. When we are, I'm going to go back, because you had mentioned, coming to my mind, around seclusion. When you're looking at seclusion, that is actually, we do have seclusion rooms in the district at a few of our schools. Our GCS school that has our Margaret Murphy GCS program. The seclusion space is a certain space. It has to have certain dimensions. Air exchange needs to be a certain way. There need things like they don't have like locks on the door. So we would hold the door shut if the student was not regulating themselves to a degree where they were unsafe and they couldn't be safely restrained. And sometimes those rooms are used in that way, but when you're looking at a classroom, that wouldn't necessarily be a seclusion space because it wouldn't meet the criteria of that space. And really, when you think of seclusion, they're alone in the room. They're completely secluded. They can't leave the classroom. Oh, sorry, I should.
That's okay. Okay, go ahead.
It's like a teacher.
So, I was hoping that you could provide some clarification. From my reading of this, I read JKAAR, right? And that one is very specific on physical restraint and seclusion, right? But I'm wondering if maybe we're thinking of different things. So physical restraint seems very defined in this policy, but then if you go to JKAA, it defines the things that physical restraint is not. And I'm wondering if that might be the piece that Crystal is talking about. So physical restraint does not include physical escort, physical prompt, or protective physical intervention. So when we are talking about imminent risk of bodily harm, I read this as being that if a student is going to be threatened by another student, the teacher doesn't have to wait until there's serious injury to intervene. They are allowed to intervene. They're just not allowed to restrain a student until there's a risk of, right? Am I reading that wrong?
No, you're right. And you want to use all of the de-escalation strategies that's in the SWEEPS plan or that we have our training for prior to even considering, right, restraint or seclusion. So students have individualized plans where they might have breaks during the day. They might have quick, there might be like quick redirections that's written into their plan. To be able to support their behavior, being able to tell them, no, you're right, we're not doing, this is what you're doing, this is your behavior, we will do that. This is what we need you to do, and then soon right after that, we see them complying, we give them positive praise, we might have praise, we might have a reinforcement system or token system. There's lots of preemptive pieces.
So I think my thought when I was looking at this was maybe I'm wondering if teachers know this. Like, are they too scared because of the restrictions put on physical restraint and seclusion to intervene when necessary? Are they aware of their, like, that they can intervene if they see a student about to hurt another student? Like, it's not that they have to wait until a serious bodily injury is happening.
So I wouldn't, so these policies are available to teachers, right? They're on our website. Students, like I talked about, have individual plans that might need this level of support, and this information is written in there. We have, but prior to that, some of the pieces that I talked about last week, and you've heard it here today, is the positive behavior intervention supports that are being put into place. That's tier 1, to be able to really strengthen the learning behaviors and how we need to act and respond and be in school and be together. And then the work that's happening at the middle school and high school as well. So we're really looking as a district as what we're doing at the tier 1 level, what are some pieces at the tier 2 level, and then what we're talking about today, this would be tier 3 plans. Does that answer your question?
1 second, Tammy, I think Carrie is.
So I was just gonna, I think I'll go to, in the policy, capital A under definitions, AD, protective physical intervention, and it describes brief physical contact with a student in response to potentially harmful action that serves to deflect, block, or redirect the student's action. So let's say, like, I'm about that, and I decided to put my hand right there briefly. No, Joe, you cannot punch Carrie. And then I walk away, right? That is the brief physical intervention. I mean, honestly, that might happen at the high school level when there's a fight in the hallway. I put my hand and said, hey, stop, right? So, that's allowed. I think it's worth checking with principals to see how they feel about whether or not their staff treat that. I think at the middle school and the high school level, it's pretty rare that staff are gonna intervene and get in the middle of physical altercation because kids are big and it's a whole different thing. But I think it's worth having principals check with that. I don't know that teachers don't know that they can't do that quick intervention.
That they can do that.
Yeah, I don't know if they don't know that.
So maybe instead of this being a policy issue, it becomes more of education.
Which would be part of PBIS.
Right.
Okay, a couple of just points. First of all, in a classroom situation, usually regular classroom teachers, there are exceptions. I know of people that have had training for restraints that are regular classroom teachers, but it is true that most regular classroom teachers are not trained in restraint. Okay, so I think that's important to know. When you get into some situations, when you have a child with a specialized plan, and you tend to have your eyes on them a little bit more because you have to. I think it is truly human nature to intervene when you can sense that it's going to go down. All right, I think that most teachers do that. I also think that teachers need to be continually supported and reminded that, they are human and they're going to be doing the best they can. But when you're the parent, it's a whole different situation. And I'm just going to speak that the PBIS program has been in place for well over a decade. And I really have concerns because tier 1 has been something, I've been out of teaching for 13 years. I was trained in, that whole thing. And I'm just, I know the kids are really coming from hard places. And the training, I don't know if it can keep up with it. And I'm not sure what schools can do. All right. And I think it's really important to be honest that we're doing the best we can with what we know, but it may not be meeting the needs. So just putting it out there. If the program's been there for over a decade and we're not seeing the progress in the behavior, just have some questions.
I just want to say something quick before and that is that I just want to bring everyone back to the kind of practical nature of what we're doing right now.
Sorry.
No, and because I think this is a big conversation. And we
It is a
keep
big
talking about this. But really what we're looking at right now is this proposed changes, JKAA, which I haven't heard anyone say otherwise, are basically mandated by state law. And this
Which
also,
changed?
So
right,
that was actually my question.
okay.
Is the wording from the state, or do we take state law and form it into our word?
I always want to throw that to policy committee for a minute, just because they did vote on this unanimously, and we talked about it for much longer than we had, so.
If anybody would like to look at the, and I think Rebecca gave it to us. So, she actually brought it with her when we were doing the policy, and it is almost verbatim. From Maine state law, the definitions all come in there, so, yeah. So it was my understanding, Anthony's understanding, Bree's understanding, when we were at committee, Rebecca went over the law with us. And this is very steeped in, 20-A, MRSA 409, and I mean, it's.
Is this furthering the discussion of state law?
About policy.
About policy,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this law, Rebecca and I were just talking about this, the very first time this law came out, I was still a high school principal, it must have been, I don't know, 8 years ago now. And all schools had intense training, because at that point, the law was so severe that we didn't even think we could do that. Like it was almost like you can't touch them unless, and then it was so extreme. So and then it swung a little bit and it's swinging again. So this is like the third iteration of this, right? Where people are trying to get it right. But I think it's important to remember, special ed, this law, they come from a place where there was a problem. Like this provides regulations for those of us in school around putting hands on children, and laws don't exist unless kids were having hands on them in ways that weren't safe and weren't okay. Like nobody invented this law because there wasn't a problem to solve. There was a problem to solve. The first iteration of the law, we all pretty universally disagreed with it and said, oh my gosh, we've gone too far. So I think this is the attempt to periodically correct that, but this regulates our putting hands on your kids, and people don't want other people putting hands on their children. So this provides us with that roadmap, and it is without question a non-negotiable roadmap. Like this is the roadmap. We cannot do anything about it, and our people will follow this regardless of what we do, because this is not an option. And I think family members and communities should expect us to have rules about when we actually would put hands on a child, because that's a really big deal. And so that's the piece I think is important. The law exists because there was a problem. Whether or not everybody agrees this is the right solution, that's for lawmakers, but that's sort of where this comes from.
I'm sorry, because that's how I started my points there a second ago. This is effectively mimicking state law. And I think, again, from a practical matter, I don't know if there's any proposed changes to this on the table right now. I haven't heard any yet. And so that could be because we feel that it's fine, or maybe we haven't been able to think of them yet. Maybe this needs to be further considered. I mean, I guess these are the directions I'm trying to figure out where we are right now, because I think this conversation could go for some time. So keep that in mind here as we move forward. Go ahead.
So I'll make these brief as possible. When I look over this policy, and the committee and everything, to me, it's not just about what the words say here in black and white, but it is about student learning. Because safety has to happen in order for students to be able to be in a safe environment to learn. And if school and staff members are not necessarily following this policy, then we don't have safe environments for our students to learn. Students need to be able to know that they can be removed from a classroom, away from a student who is throwing things or punching or whatever. So they know that their learning can continue in a safe environment. They need to get away from an unsafe environment. And I think this policy kind of covers that if a student is going to be doing that there's policy that comes through to also protect the student who is the one who is having a difficult time self-regulating their emotions that comes out in physical outbursts. If they, if hands have to be going on them for restraint, if there's a policy and procedure that is only going to last for 10 minutes and no more, like it's not, you know, meant to be this huge disciplinary thing, but again, that even that student can get back to a place where they can get back into the learning environment safely. So I just want you to keep that in mind as well. When you look at this policy, keep in mind that it is about student learning. Like that's what our job is here too, is to make sure that we are going over policies that support our students and support their learning. And this policy has to deal with some of the other stuff, the yucky stuff that we don't want to have to deal with in our classrooms, but it has to come back to the safety so that the environment can be safe for all students to be able to learn. So I think it spells it out pretty clearly what staff should do in those situations. And again, just goes back to keeping both sides, all the students safe so they can learn. The second thing I wanted to just ask is policies and trainings and things at the beginning of the year that teachers are required to complete, like the bloodborne pathogens, that sort of thing. Is this one that they would need to read? Have they done that in the past?
I think it is a mandatory one that we review, and then there's a constant training of safety care. We maintain a list of every school and who's safety care trained.
Right, so that those that are, you know, in more of a gen ed class who may feel like, oh, I don't need that training necessarily from a special teacher, but I do know the policy that if I'm walking down the hallway and I see that a kid's about to hurt another student, I do know what my rights are under this policy to understand it clearly. That does happen.
Yes, they get a review, but as I said, like, I mean, it's certainly possible that not all teachers fully understand that, so it's something to work with principals on.
Any other thoughts? Yes, Anthony.
So my only thought, is, and I think we talked about this in the committee, but that was probably a month and a half ago or more. So, it's hard to recall exactly what we discussed then. But, one of the things that this policy doesn't have is a definition for serious physical injury, right? Because that's the thing that is changed at the front of the document. It used to just be a risk of injury, and now it's a risk of serious injury. And so I know that it's in the statute. It's sort of outlined there. There's four or five different criteria.
I was gonna say, I was just reading it today.
Serious physical injury is any impairment of the physical condition of a person, whether in self-inflicted or inflicted on someone else, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's page 22.
Yeah, on page 2 of JKAR. IA2. Are you done?
Yeah. So that's just such a strange place when you have the definitions in JKAA, right? This has the definition. This, you would think you would go to here for the definition. So that's my only contribution at this point is would it be useful to have that definition ported over here? Just for consistency's sake, because if you're looking for definitions, I don't know about you, but I look for them under the heading definitions.
I feel like where I'm at right now is that these policies are steeped in law, regulations. I don't think it would be wise for the board to change them. But I do feel like as a board, we would want something in place or something from Carrie saying that we will further educate our teachers on these policies in some fashion. So that's where I'm at.
We ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor approving and adopting the second reading of JKAA and JKAR. And
Yeah,
that's unanimous.
Oh, your hand's up. I'm saying, when I turned, you didn't see it. I do, I
All right.
know, and both students.
All right, that brings us to our executive sessions. Thank you all for coming tonight. So, item 10.4, we're not there yet, we're not there yet, we're not there yet. I'll take a motion to request an executive session to discuss driver education. Board staff negotiations. One of us is 405-6D, motion by Peter, seconded by Bree, all those in favor. That's unanimous. We are in executive.